Let's get these ponies on the racetrack. That is what Nerdbomber just said to me in reference to us beginning to record this episode. Welcome to the latest Online Warriors episode. It's still January. There's still news to be discussed. And as always, I am Illeagle.86, and I am joined by Nerdbomber, as I already mentioned.
Hello, hello. Let's get these ponies going.
The ponies are off and running. Techtic, what pony are you placing your bet on?
Bullseye. It's got to be Bullseye. Feels like a real horse name.
Bullseye, like the horse from Toy Story 2 and Toy Story 3 and Toy Story 4.
Maybe that's where it clicked from. Probably. Yeah, let's go with that. That's what I was thinking of.
My money is personally on Whimsical Treasure. It's in lane 4. But anyways, enough about ponies and more about nerd stuff, because that's presumably why you showed up. We have a great slate of news today. Actually, there were a lot of topics potentially on the docket. We had to pick and choose in the interest of time. We're going to be talking about that new Morbius trailer starring Jared Leto. We're going to be talking about this NASA intern who apparently found a planet 3 days into his new job. And of course, we're going to be talking about the new trailer from Bethesda for Doom Eternal, which I believe is slated to drop later this year. So full slate, very excited. Let's dive right in to the Morbius trailer. Now, for those that don't know, the Morbius trailer and the Morbius movie is designed to be very similar to Venom, from what I understand, in that it's going to be part of Sony's kind of newly fledged Spider-Man. It's called like the Sony Marvel Universe or something. I actually looked this up earlier. Not the Marvel Cinematic Universe, obviously, not to be confused with that. But Sony is creating this universe of characters like Venom. I believe Jake Gyllenhaal's Mysterio might get a movie. And of course, now we're talking about Morbius. So did you guys watch this trailer?
I did watch the trailer. I do have to say my first impression. So I don't really like Jared Leto in general, at least not actor Jared Leto. Like, I like 30 Seconds to Mars as a band, but once he got into acting, I find a lot of his roles to be a little bit too weird for me, and I especially did not like his take on Joker. That said, even though I don't typically like Jared Leto, I actually find this trailer super interesting. I think he could pull off that weird, dark and brooding vampire role really well. And overall, I think the story is pretty compelling. I know I did a little bit of background research into Morbius. I know Techtic has a lot more to say on that. But from what I've seen online, that they have done a decent job, at least from the trailer, in staying true to the comic story. So overall, I'm kind of excited about this. I think, like I said, again, this is a different tone. If we go back to what we were saying about the New Mutants trailer, this just seems like a very different tone from a lot of the superhero movies that we've been seeing. And I know that the darker tone really didn't hit for a lot of the DC movies in the past, but I think that if you have interesting characters, and I feel like they'll get at least some input from Marvel, even though they aren't directly associated with Marvel, I feel like having the in association with Marvel factor that they had in the trailer, I think that might help give them some better direction so they don't totally flop it. I think it could be interesting. It could be a fun, kind of darker movie. How about you, Techtic?
You know, I very much agree with you with respect to it seems that they stayed very true to the origin story of Morbius. Very accomplished scientist, blood disease, wants to find a cure, turns into a vampire, right? Pretty straightforward as far as how to turn into a vampire, in my opinion.
That's how everyone does it.
Yeah, obvi. But the thing that I'm kind of excited to see is how they play out, I guess we'll call it beast mode, where he's a full-on vampire form. We'll call it the vampire monster. That was the one thing that I actually found that got me not excited about this.
Which that's what you see at the very end, right?
Yeah, while his monster form looked kind of parallel to what you see in the comic books, people like seeing attractive things, and that mother looked ugly. I'm sorry to say.
So you wanted it to be a more subdued version of the monster that you see in the comics, because I did some background research too, and the picture that you see when you like go on the Wikipedia for Morbius is like pretty similar to what they seem to have put together.
I wanted it to look like a monster, but I didn't want it to look like Clayface, I guess we'll call it.
See, here's the thing, though. Like, if you go back, I think vampire movies are pretty popular. I want to say in, like the 80s or something like that. Vampires got super in vogue, kind of like how zombies were within the last decade or so.
Well, there was an American Werewolf in London. Mm-hmm. There was... What else was there? That's the only one I could think of.
Like, when did Dracula come out? I know there were like a bunch of Dracula video games and TV shows because I know
I also
like
just realized I said American Werewolf in London. That's not vampires.
Yeah, that's a werewolf. I wasn't sure. I've never seen that movie, so I was like, maybe there was a vampire in it. I don't know.
I was just thinking werewolves because werewolves were. I mean, Teen Wolf, American Werewolf in London. Werewolves were in vogue. Dracula, I believe, was in vogue, but I can't think of any. When did Blade come out? That was way later than that.
Blade was like the 80s, I think, maybe 80s or 90s.
I think it was the 90s.
Yeah. And then shortly after Blade, you had the Underworld series, which was both werewolves and vampires. Real exciting stuff. And combination, hybrids.
I feel like there's
Blade was 1998, by the way. Sorry, continue.
Well, I'm trying to think. There was even that movie. Why am I blanking on the name? But it was where it was a girl and she was like attracted to. It wasn't a mermaid man, but it was like some weird aquatic creature, and everyone loved that movie. And he was super sketchy looking. So
Interview with the Vampire was 1994. I remember that one was a big deal. There was a Dracula movie in 1992. I'm not seeing a whole lot. Nosferatu was 1979. Maybe that's what you're thinking of. The Lost Boys was 1987. So there were a few sprinkled. I mean, there's been a million vampire movies. I just Googled vampire movies to like try and see, and there have been quite a few. I see, and to kind of draw again, you sound like you're drawing on your experience with past vampire movies. I kind of agree with you. I don't super agree with Jared Leto, like as an actor. Like he was good in Dallas Buyers Club. Otherwise, I haven't really seen any of his stuff. I kind of just think he's a weird guy. But that, in conjunction with the pretty boy factor, make him a perfect vampire character in light of like the recent pretty vampire renaissance that really has been driven primarily by Twilight, right? So like when you see Jared Leto, especially given I'm sure what they're doing in the makeup department on this movie, it's not a far reach to see a vampire,
right? And I basically hope they did kind of similar what they did with Venom, where it's more him in his like human form and the internal struggles between his bloodlust and wanting to be a normal person kind of balance. And it's always the mental demons that I guess movies that interest me personally. So
now Nerdbomber said that you seem to know a lot about the background. From what I gathered on the character, obviously Michael Morbius, he's, like you said, PhD with the blood disease. He tries to find a cure for himself, and he eventually winds up, I don't know, turning to Eastern medicine or something. The trailer kind of suggests that he goes off the rails, goes off to some place, does some kind of ritual, and essentially becomes a vampire. Now, he starts out as a villain to Spider-Man in the comics, but eventually kind of turns into this sort of anti-hero kind of thing, almost not quite like Deadpool, but like
almost like
this
Venom.
Anti-hero,
exactly like
almost
Venom.
like Venom, who is kind of trying to balance his desire to do good with, like you said, the bloodlust, and that's meant in the most literal sense of he literally wants to feast on human blood, which I don't know how that's going to play in this movie.
Outside of like the vampire stuff, one of the things that I found interesting was all of the like weird Easter eggs and ties to Spider-Man. I don't know if you guys noticed these at all, but I don't know if I just have like a Hawkeye, but they were also all over the internet, so I can't take credit for finding them all myself.
I wouldn't say you had a Hawkeye, more of a Vulture eye, if I may.
But so that, I guess that'll take me to the first one. Obviously, Michael Keaton appears at the end of the trailer. And do you guys think that he'll be reprising his role as Vulture? Like, they don't outright say that he is Vulture, I don't think, in the trailer. But do you think it's just like a coincidental nod to the Spider-Man universe? But it feels weird because they also had the Spider-Man murderer poster at one point that's like behind him. And I mean, obviously that has to have ties from Far From Home, but at the same time, if you look really closely, it almost looks like the same Spider-Man pose and suit from the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man, or maybe even like the video game. It doesn't look like the Tom Holland Spider-Man, but the fact that they put murderer over it kind of leads me to believe that there's a tie there. So do you think that they would bring Michael Keaton back in a different role, or do you think they'll bring him back as Vulture?
I'm going to start with the Michael Keaton side of it. I don't think they're going to bring him back from Vulture. I think they're still trying to figure out how they want to do the universes, and they're just going to keep it simple for now. I think that was more of a wink to DC's Batman, because you have, this guy who is a vampire, quote, Batman, right? And then you have Michael Keaton, who played as Batman in the DC side of things. So I think it's more of a playful wink at that, as opposed to him reprising the role of Vulture. But Illeagle, you were going to say something with respect to that.
Well, yes. So, first of all, somehow watching this trailer, I totally missed Michael Keaton. How did I miss that? Was it like at the very end or something?
He even said, "What's up, Doc?" Like, it wasn't like he walked past. They
drew attention to him in the trailer.
I don't know how I missed that. I love the Michael Keaton Vulture. So if that is him, it's super exciting. I did see the Spider-Man murderer thing, and I agree that and if you look, I'm looking at the picture right now, that is Tobey Maguire, which is very confusing. It's very confusing because that wouldn't make, as much as I love Tobey Maguire, anyone who's been listening to this podcast for a while knows that I'm a Tobey Maguire Spider-Man stan. But that wouldn't make any sense. My guess is they just threw a stock image back there in post and accidentally used the wrong one, and they will fix it before the movie comes out. I saw a theory that says that if you look at the movies that are being made in this Sony Marvel universe, you have Venom, of course. It's going to be Spider-Man. It's going to be involved at some point. Now you have Morbius. Apparently Vulture is still there. I think it has to be Vulture. I don't think it's the Batman thing. I think that would be too confusing. And even Mysterio, who now might get his own movie, there are people that are saying that there's one character who actually ties all these characters together, and it's the Tinkerer. Now, Techtic, do you know anything about that? Because I'm already stretching the limits of comic book knowledge.
I am not familiar with the Tinkerer, but these theories that you read, do you have more insight?
So the Tinkerer was actually in one of the MCU movies. He was in Spider-Man: Homecoming, which again, that was the movie that Vulture was in, and he's like kind of one of Vulture's guys who like in the Homecoming version of the Vulture's origin story, he's kind of this salvage guy who like after the Avengers thing happens, they're picking up stuff in New York City and they start finding all this tech and they keep it for themselves, and he winds up, selling it on the black market and like making this suit for himself. And the person who helps him do that is Tinkerer, who I guess is this guy who just like makes a bunch of stuff for bad guys. I think, I wish I had this theory, the whole fan theory in front of me. I think I saw it on Reddit, which Reddit's the perfect place for this kind of thing. But again, if you look at the characters that are in line for movies in this quote unquote universe, and you look at their connections and their ties, the Tinkerer often comes up as like having made something at some point for all of these people. And there are people who also think that like we're even starting to see like eventually there will be a Sinister Six. I think that's eventually Sony's plan. They kind of laid that plan out with Amazing Spider-Man 2, and then that franchise kind of burned out.
So do you think Sony's doing what basically the inverse MCU?
They're laying... So I think what they might be doing is they might be laying groundwork by making movies about individual villains and anti-heroes, and then eventually they will bring them all together to fight Spider-Man.
Which
honestly is pretty good idea. I think it's a pretty good idea to. I hope that what happened is someone in a boardroom at Sony was like, okay, MCU is doing great. We have to be different than the MCU though. How about we do, like you just said, an inverse MCU, where instead of focusing on all the heroes, we focus on all the villains, and voila.
Well, I've always found the villains so compelling. I mean, I think we talked about this back when Suicide Squad came out, but I think that movie had a lot of potential and kind of fell flat. And I don't know if that was due to the writing or the directing or just like the creative direction. I obviously think the Joker was a huge miss on that point, but that was such a huge opportunity to delve into villain backstories. And I think that's why movies like The Joker also do so well. I think people like these flawed characters. I mean, they're not someone that you want to root for, but it's just like an interesting story to watch because they're not perfect and they obviously have fatal flaws. And I always find it interesting when a good story can show you that these are people that aren't necessarily 100% evil. I like seeing that twist on villains where they're not 100% evil and you kind of do want to root for them even though they're bad guys. So like you don't want them to succeed in their evil doings, but you just want to see like how they got to where they are, like what led to their mental breakdown and destruction. And so I think it's a good idea. I don't know. I like it.
So go ahead.
So that said, you guys all know what my favorite game of 2018 was, and that's the Spider-Man game on the PlayStation 4. I would love to see a Dr. Octopus backstory because that game made me truly, truly feel for him. So Sony, if you're listening, go ahead and do that, please.
The sympathetic villain is Honestly, it's something, and by sympathetic villain, what I mean is a villain that the audience can connect to and relate to. That's something that, if there's one place that the MCU has room to grow in, it's that. So if Sony were to come in and take advantage of that kind of hole in what Marvel's done, that would be really cool. To speak to your point about Joker, Joker, obviously, it's a great movie. We could talk about how many Oscar nominations. I think it's leading the Oscar nominations this year. I'm not sure that it's a comic book movie. I'm not sure I would call it that. I would more call it a movie just about like the state of like mental health care like in the world. I don't know.
Right. I wouldn't necessarily call it a comic book movie, but it definitely is a villain story. And like if you don't even think about the scope of comic book movies, there are so many good cinematic experiences that just focus on a villain, and some of those are the best movies that I've seen because it's just interesting to see like what the mindset of these people are.
Well, or even to the villain point too, and you mentioned that they really screwed up Suicide Squad. I couldn't agree more because Batman has like probably the best rogues gallery in comics, right? So how do you mess that up? But I mean, even a character like Deadpool, who has been shown to be super, super successful. He's still a hero, sure, but a lot of people call him an anti-hero. He's got this edge to him. It's not quite the villain route, but it's closer to it, and clearly it works. So, like, I think it's interesting, to kind of go back to Morbius, which is where we started this conversation. Like, it would be cool for a movie like this where you have this protagonist who has a dark side to really work out. And, I think Venom worked, I think.
I think it was like critically panned, but it made a lot of money.
It was a commercial success without a doubt. I watched Venom. I was very lukewarm on it. I think there were parts of it that were great. I like Tom Hardy. I just think there were certain elements of it that were weird. It felt like it didn't have a place in the existing comic book movie setup that at the time it came out, Marvel was obviously reaching a high point, and this was kind of trying to be a standalone movie, kind of trying to not. So it was just, I felt like I had a foot in each camp. So it would be cool to see Sony really establish something, but to do that, you have to lay groundwork with movies like Morbius that establish a character who potentially could return for many more movies. But you have to start kind of on the small side. So Morbius looks pretty cool, unless he goes full beast mode, in which case he looks super ugly. It is coming out July 31st of this year, so I'm sure we'll see at least one more trailer before that happens, but get hyped. Yeah, Jared Leto, of course, was in it. Matt Smith, Tyrese Gibson, Jared Harris, who I'm a big fan of from the Sherlock Holmes movies. Should be a pretty good movie, one to watch out for sure. Let's move away from trailers for a second, because we're going to be going back to trailers later in the show. And let's talk about this kid you've been hearing about from NASA. So what happened this past week? Actually, I think it was this past weekend I first heard about this. A high school student named Wolf Kukier, hopefully I'm pronouncing that right, Cukier, pronounce it however you want. A high school student joined NASA's Goddard Space Flight Center in Greenbelt, Maryland for a summer internship. And 3 days into the internship, he found an Earth-sized planet orbiting 2 stars. So I can go more into the details of this, but first of all, this is one of those stories that you hear that you're like, what am I doing with my life? Like, I heard this and I was like, this kid is finding planets. I've been, slogging away in a PhD for years and years. Where's my planet? I haven't found a planet yet.
Yeah, I mean, you gotta hope that they're going to name this planet after him in some capacity. And I mean, this kid, obviously, he's definitely off to a bright future, no pun intended. But look at it. This kid is still in high school, and he was 3 days into an internship with NASA and discovered a freaking planet. When I was his age, I think I was working in a grocery store, and I think I did have a high school internship. It was very short, and it entailed stuffing envelopes. So it was like super intelligent endeavor for a local politician. And let me tell you, you definitely want to use the spongy thing to seal the envelopes. That was my major discovery in my high school internship, because you will paper cut your tongue, and that's no fun for anyone.
When you were sealing envelopes, did you happen to run across any planets?
I did not. Literally the little spongy wet thing that was kind of gross to begin with, like that was my major discovery, which is kind of pathetic looking back on it.
So this planet is called TOI 1338b. And scientists have determined it was the first circumbinary planet discovered by their satellite. As I mentioned, a world which orbits 2 stars.
That sounds
Kookier
a lot like Tatooine in Star Wars, huh?
In a sense, yes. This kid has co-authored a paper on the discovery with scientists from the center, as well as San Diego University, the University of Chicago, and elsewhere. The planet itself is about 6.9 times bigger than the Earth, and it's located about 1,300 light years away. So essentially, he found this planet just using his eyeballs, when there are algorithms that are in place that are designed to kind of pick up on these things and find planets. And the other algorithms apparently missed stuff, and he found something right away. So I don't know if you chalk this up to luck or if you chalk it up to him looking in the right place. I don't know to what extent he was told, look at this and see if you see anything, or if he got there himself.
So I'm a bit of a pessimist, and I have a theory.
You think it's a hoax?
No, but yes. And let me explain why. So,
Okay.
so you're trolling the internet, and you see article that says, NASA discovers new planet. Do you click it, or do you keep scrolling? Now,
I
now
see.
parallel, you see an article that says, high school intern discovers new planet on 3rd day.
Well, it worked on me.
Which-
This is a conspiracy theory, and you're saying it's a publicity stunt.
And then that said, there's a paper already that's a co-author. So in my opinion, these scientists found it and they said, hey, why don't you shadow them to do this, and you can be on the paper too. And then that snowballed into, all by himself, high school student discovers planet.
Honestly, this is one of the more compelling conspiracy theories that you leveled on this show. I will say that much. The thing that gets me is giving him co-authorship on the paper, because in like 50 years or like 100 years, someone's going to go back and is going to be like reading through these papers and being like, I wonder what this kid, like, oh, look at this kid. Like, I don't think they would put his name on something. I mean, that's like academic fraud to an extent, right?
No,
I
he
mean-
he did work.
I think in terms of academia, I know we were all a part of academia at one point or another, but as long as you contributed something to the paper, you can technically put your name on it. So I wouldn't be that surprised if maybe he didn't discover it all by himself, but maybe they were like, hey, look in this general area and this is what you want to look for. We don't know if there's anything there. Because I think the article that I read about it said that whatever computer algorithms they had in place could not easily detect this type of planet because it had the 2 suns. And I believe then they said that it was pretty much just easier for the human eye to detect it. So they probably had like a general sense of where they wanted him to look or what they wanted him to look for. And then just he'd maybe put in the legwork to actually find the thing. I don't know if I would take away his accomplishment completely, but to say that he completely did it by himself, it is a little bit far-fetched. But who knows? Maybe this kid is a genius. I don't know.
But now
Yeah, I mean,
NASA's got all this publicity. More kids probably have more interest in NASA because they can discover their own planet. There's so many pros for this story to just conveniently happen and not benefit NASA.
I mean, honestly,
how
I'm not
does
that
it
upset
benefit
about
NASA
them.
though? How does it benefit NASA outside? So you mentioned like academic outreach. I suppose that's the way it benefits them. But like, how does NASA benefit from me reading this article on Time Magazine about this high school student?
A
that
workforce.
found the planet.
Or do kids grow up now saying, I want to be an astronaut at the same frequencies back when, we were landing on the moon? There's interest there.
You're not wrong. I think that's a hyperbolic example, but I could, like I said, I could believe this conspiracy theory. I also could believe that this kid is like the next Einstein. Anything's possible. Maybe he just really went and was like, I'm gonna find something today, and he found it with his own sweat, blood, and tears.
I have my foot firmly planted in both worlds. I think my like meet in the middle scenario is probably what happened. Because, I'm sorry, 3 days in the job, you probably don't even know how to use the equipment that they're giving you. So he obviously had some guidance, but I think that he probably did put in the legwork and noticed it himself, which is a very valiant effort for a high school student 3 days into an internship.
I mean, when I was in high school, I could barely tie my shoes. I'm using myself as a reference point of like internships that I had, like even when I was like in college, I could have never found a planet on day 3.
I can barely,
even if they put it right in front of me.
Right now, as an educated person, I have a telescope and I can barely focus in on Mars. We tried over the summer. We found like the moon. I think we found Jupiter, but Mars was
Whoa, we got Mars. It was tracking Saturn that we had issues doing.
We saw the rings, I thought. I definitely remember seeing rings. I thought it was Mars that we couldn't see. I don't remember.
I mean, if you could track all this stuff, you'd probably be a part of NASA by now.
Exactly. But like, I can barely use a backyard telescope. So the fact that this kid was able to use super technologically advanced telescopes or satellite imagery to find this new planet is incredible. If I had to volley a conspiracy theory out here, this is my conspiracy theory. So in the same year that Rise of Skywalker comes out, and Baby Yoda takes over the world, which P.S. Baby Yoda is going to be a Build-A-Bear, so there's that. And shout out to my friend Waffles for giving me that tip-off. Is it that much of a coincidence that a planet that is like Tatooine, with orbiting two suns, was suddenly discovered? Coincidence? I think not. I don't know to what extent the planet is like Tatooine, other than the fact that it's orbiting two suns. And granted, that's all I've got.
Detail.
But
I think to respond to your meet in the middle theory, like I think a very logical middle meeting point would be this kid is legitimately a genius. He found this planet, and he went to his supervisor and said, "I found this planet," and this supervisor was like, "This is a golden opportunity for us to, like you said, Techtic, like drum up a lot of great publicity." Because otherwise, I mean, what supervisor wouldn't try to take credit for that? That's the other thing. Is like, let's say you had an intern and he found a planet, you'd be like, this looks like a promotion for me if I can just say that I did this. Which probably happens a lot in like corporate America, at least. I don't know. There's a lot of questions here. We don't have a lot of the details. And so we are formally inviting Wolf Kookier to come on the show in a guest spot and, maybe correct me on the pronunciation of his name at the very least, but also try to like clear his name and like give more in depth and like tell the story of how he found this planet. So if he's listening, you know what to do. Wolf. Also, great first name. Yeah. Do you think he joined NASA so he could howl at the moon?
That is incredible. I did not put that together, but I hope so. Okay, so listeners, now we really want to know his backstory. So I think we all need to just like contact him on Twitter and try to petition him to come on the Online Warriors so we can hear if he really did join NASA so that he can howl at the moon.
I would love to talk to this kid. If only to ask him how he did it so I can try to do it. I'm at least 10 years older than him. And guess what? I've found 0 planets. I haven't even found any moons or planetoids. What am I doing? Anyways, shout out to Wolf, shout out to NASA. Pretty cool story. We are going to take a short break to shout out some of our friends. But before we do that, I also want to shout out our very good friend, Mr. Ben Checkness. Ben has been supporting us on Patreon now for a good many months at our highest level, which is the night level. And that gets him access to the monthly secret segment and the vlog. And it also gets him a producer credit on every episode, a shout out like this one, and input into our game segment at the end of every show. And he will also be presumably coming on for another guest spot fairly soon, as that's a periodic opportunity as well. You want to be like Ben. Let me just put it that way. But if you don't want to support us at the highest level, you can also support us at the Squire level, which is our second level of support. And that gets you access to the monthly secret segment and vlog. And you can also support us at our lowest page level of support, which gets you access to the monthly secret segment. So if you're interested in checking that out, if you like what you're listening to, we like talking to you. So we really appreciate it if you would go over to patreon.com/onlinewarriorspodcast and consider supporting what we do. With that said, let's shout out some of our friends and we'll be right back.
I'm Harrison.
I'm Jordan.
Well, I'm Harrison.
I'm fucking Jordan.
All right!
And we're the Grief Rio Podcast. Let us be your unnatural Sherpa guides on this existential plane of mountainous game and movie exploration.
And don't forget about that spookiness that lives within us all, but mainly in you, you spooky bitch.
How damn offended.
We've been voted the best podcast to listen to by many.
By many, that means a few. That's more than one.
Results may vary. We'll see you on the next episode of Grief
Burrito, yeah!
Yes!
We're back after those friendly messages to talk to you about Doom Eternal. So the latest Doom Eternal trailer just came out about 8 hours ago as we're recording this, so it would have been Tuesday the 14th. Features a lot of gameplay. A lot of... but before I get into... I have a gripe with this trailer. I will say I want to finish playing the original Doom, which I have and I've never finished, and I want to get this game and play it for sure. But I have a gripe. But first, I'll let you guys kind of summarize your thoughts on what it showed us.
So, first of all, like the last Doom game, this game looks super fast, super fun. From this trailer, it looks like it's setting up a lot more plot and lore than previous Doom games. And I know
you're getting to my complaint.
So I know a lot of people aren't coming to Doom looking for that. People are looking for that fast-paced action, but I personally am totally here for it. I think the world of Doom is relatively untapped. I know we have I think they've made like a movie. They're getting ready to make a TV show about it. There's a little bit of like... movie. Yeah, actually, so when I was a kid, I don't know when this movie came out. I don't think I was that much of a kid. But when the movie did come out, like maybe I just had poor taste in movies, or maybe it was just on HBO all the time. But I must have watched. I did. I watched it so often, and
it came out
think
in 2005.
Okay, so I wasn't really a kid. I was like,
I was gonna say you were like.
I was 13, old enough 14. To know better. I was definitely old enough to know better. But I watched this movie a ton of times. And I think the world of Doom is super interesting. So I'm totally here for a story. I know a lot of people probably won't be. They'll probably complain that it's going to slow the entire action down. But I thought it looked cool. The gameplay was super hectic and obviously looked really smooth and polished, regardless of how fast and frenetic it was. And the one thing that really stood out to me from the gameplay was the new glowy light sword, which was insanely awesome. I'm totally here for it. It's a new weapon. I don't remember there ever being a sword in Doom. It's usually like gunplay.
I don't think so.
And watching him slice that one demon in like 3/3, I guess, was just awesome. I'm super excited and pumped to try the sword.
Techtic?
So I agree that I am also here for the story aspect of it in a world that is absolutely saturated with online multiplayer, shooter, Call of Duty, Fortnite, need I go on type games. This to get not only a fast-paced story game, but get one that will give you nightmares is refreshing, and I'm absolutely excited for it.
So I'm going to provide the counterpoint. So as far as I know, and I want to preface all of this by saying that I am not a Doom archivist. I'm not an expert. One thing I do know a little bit about is Doom Guy. And Doom Guy is of course the main character in pretty much all the Doom games. And I don't think we've ever seen his face until now.
And that was a little weird.
I think that's great. I did not want to see his face. I don't think anyone was asking to see his face. It's almost like a Master Chief situation. I don't know if we've seen Master Chief's face. He looks like Master Chief. But I don't need to see his face. And on top of that, I think I have a lot of concerns that adding a plot to Doom is going to bog down what it primarily is. And I hear you when you say there are a lot of mindless multiplayer games out there, but the Doom single player experience was great. And I found it to be especially great for times when I want to play a video game, but I want to really turn my brain off. And I'm not a big multiplayer guy in any sense. And Doom provides a single player experience that is just, you go around, you shoot stuff, you melee stuff. It's very visceral. You have this hard rock going on in the background, and you're hitting stuff. Good for anger management, good for whatever you want it to be good for. If you add story to that, first of all, I'm curious how they're going to keep the pace that they've maintained with these games while also involving story.
I could see it being like one of the linear games and experiences that we had. So if you go back to last generation of games, like on the 360 and the PS3, a lot of games were very mindless action. And then they were just mindless action interrupted by cutscenes that you could skip, where characters pontificated and it would give you snippets of story, but then you basically just went back to killing things. And I could see them doing something like that, especially since Doom is such a retro classic game to begin with. I could see them pulling something like that off. I do agree with you about seeing Doom Guy's face. I think one of the things that Doom has always succeeded in is like you don't really know who Doom Guy is, so it's super easy to just insert yourself and not think about it. Like you just become Doom Guy, you're just taking down demons. And I think if you have a big story, one of the things that they might have to do is give the character a voice. And since they've already given him a face, I feel like that does take something away from the character, because now you're no longer immersed in this first person action. You're playing as a character.
And in Doom 2016 specifically, I remember the beginning sequence of it very well, and I feel like they go to great lengths and great pains to really emphasize that idea that, okay, this is you. Like, you're picking up this helmet and you're putting it on, and just imagine that it's you. And to me, Doom, it's currently, you've said there are games like it, there have been games like it in the past. I don't think there's any game right now like Doom 2016. Like, I think it occupied a very specific niche, but it sounds like Techtic, you have something you want to add.
See, what I think is going to happen is once you add the plot line and the face and the voice, is it's going to feel a lot like Gears, where you have that gory, action-packed combat, but then you cutscene storyline. So I think people will see a lot of parallels there, but I don't think it's going to be bad. I don't think it's going to take away from it.
It won't be bad, but like, I think you said that it would become Gears in a way that you meant as a compliment, but to me that's just saying we're going to take the originality that this game has and we're going to water it down to make it like everything else.
I think,
and I don't know who's asking for that.
If they can find a good balance, maybe it will work. That's going to be the main key thing here, because like you said, it does fill a niche that doesn't really exist in video games right now. You don't have that mindless experience in your AAA titles. I'm sure there's indie games galore out there that's 100% what you're looking for, but in terms of that AAA polish, I think this is probably one of the only franchises still out there where it's just like crazy
killing
action
stuff
that's mindless that you don't have to think about. And I think if they have some balance, maybe it'll work out. I don't think they'll be able to please everybody. I wonder, a good design decision, in my opinion, would be for them to be able to disable story mode. Like, if you can just turn off all cutscenes and blast through the game like you typically would in other Dooms, then if they enable that option where you can turn that on and off. So like someone like me, if I do want to get the story, then I'm happy, but you are also happy because then you can just blast through it without worrying about it.
Yeah, I mean, I have to think that, and maybe this is a gross generalization, but I have to think that if you take a cross-section of fans of Doom 2016, the percentage of them who wanted more story, 10%, 20%. Like I see the move to a more complex story mode as Bethesda trying to draw more people, which is fair, but it's not. I don't think it appeals to the core fans of the game, the past game, and of the franchise.
I think curious because like you said, like I don't think they needed to do this. I think anybody, like people are so hyped about Doom 2016 that I don't think that they needed to do anything really except make more of it.
Exactly. I mean, I think by involving a story that appears to take place on Earth, which Doom 2016 did not, I think you're trying to get people who aren't as familiar with the franchise invested, which is a fair move. But to me, I think there's like you said, there's potential for them to do it the right way. That's for sure. It could be an amazing game. The visuals look amazing. The new melees look amazing. The combat still looks as good as ever. They're going to have to establish a balance, or like you said, involve a way of turning story mode off, which should be a possibility. I don't know. We'll see what happens. I don't think there's a release date on this game yet. There might have been one in the trailer. I don't see one when I believe just Google the game.
It is. So they had originally postponed it, I believe, to March of this year. I could be wrong. It's either March or May. It's an M month.
It's March.
Yes. So I believe it's still coming out in March 2020.
March 20th, 2020 is when it's due out. This one's on my list for sure. If only because, I do need to finish Doom 2016. I really, really liked Doom 2016. Even though I didn't finish it, I really, really liked it. So
you liked it so much, you got it again in VR.
That's true. And I have to add, the VR version of that game is like impossible. It is so hard. It's super fun and really like top notch, but
is it impossible from like difficulty level or just like nauseating?
You would have a problem with the nauseatingness, but
okay.
I don't struggle with the nauseating factor. I more struggle. It is legitimately difficult. And if you look up, to kind of back up, to back up a little bit and to not make it seem like I'm a crappy video game player. If you look up reviews, a lot of the reviews say that it is quite challenging. So I guess know that going in if you're thinking about getting Doom VR. But yeah, Doom Eternal comes out March 20th, 2020. It's sure to be a big one, regardless of what they wind up doing with the story. Looks like it's going to include enough of that trademark combat to get a lot of the people that bought Doom 2016 and made that a very commercially successful game. So that will be something. To stay in video games and to transition to the next part of our show, which is What Are You Up To Wednesday, of course. I'm going to talk about my experience with Control thus far. I've been playing this pretty heavily, actually, for the past, I think now it would be a week and a half or 2 weeks. It's great. And I believe when we had our friend Ben on the show a little while back, he talked about how great it was, and he might have even said it was his game of the year. It's very, very good from a gameplay standpoint, especially. The story is not anything special so far. It's actually kind of convoluted, and the story isn't engaging me as much as I thought it would, but the gameplay is. I'm a big fan of it. I've been talking back and forth. Shout out to Stephen Keller, who's one of our followers on Twitter. I've been talking to him, and we've kind of been going back and forth as we both kind of progress through the game together. You're basically this person who, it's a third person shooter, of course, but you also kind of get these powers throughout. You get telekinesis, and you get the ability to hypnotize people and levitate eventually. And it's just super, super, super fun. It's a great single player experience, fantastically rendered environments, great combat. I'm really, really liking it so far.
Where would you rank this game? Because I know you also played Quantum Break, which was another game by Remedy.
Better. Definitely better. Quantum Break, so I think Quantum Break, the problem with Quantum Break is that I rented it and I had to return it. I don't want to say Quantum Break was bad, because it wasn't bad. It was in actuality quite good. I think the combat in this game is better and more satisfying. And I don't remember what the skill tree... Was there a skill tree in Quantum Break?
I don't remember. I think you got more skills as the game progressed, but I don't remember if you chose the skills or if they just unlocked as the story went along.
The way Control works, you unlock skills, but you can upgrade them using ability points. It's a skill tree very similar to like Spider-Man or the Arkham games. It's exactly my kind of... like dabbling in RPG but not quite getting there mechanic. It's exactly the right weight for me. So I'm really digging that. The thing I remember most about Quantum Break is kind of like the TV episodes that they would pair with the game, which was not bad, but it was a lot, and I thought it was secondary to the game experience. Control is very, very focused, obviously, on the in-game experience, and my least favorite part of it actually is the cutscenes, because I want to just get back to playing the game, which I don't really know what that says about the quality of the game. I mean, or the quality of the story. It more just says the quality of the game itself is super high while you're playing it. So, yeah, I mean, that's the meat of my update. I saw Ad Astra and it wasn't very good. I feel like I should say that too, but I will swing it over to the Nerdbomber.
So one of the things that I finally got a chance to start watching is Brooklyn Nine-Nine. And I know the show has been on for I think it's going into its 7th season now.
I love Brooklyn Nine-Nine so much. I'm so happy right now.
I actually wanted to watch the show, and Techtic and I were planning on watching the show, but he had this false notion that I would not like the show because I'm not a huge fan of The Lonely Island. Just like I'm on a Boat was funny, but
sure,
some of it just gets a little bit too much. And so I guess he thought because I didn't really like The Lonely Island that I wouldn't like Andy Samberg's humor enough, because he is one of the producers of the show and obviously the main star of the show. And to me, I was super excited about it because it basically looks like The Office or Parks and Rec just set in a police office. And right now, I'm having a great time. I think we're halfway through season 2, and I love all the characters. It's one of the funniest shows that I've seen in a while. We've watched a lot of sitcoms lately, and I think this one's definitely rising to the top of the pile. It's like up there in the echelons of The Office and Parks and Rec, like I mentioned before. And
for sure,
my favorite character so far, and I don't know if this will change, but I freaking love Captain Holt. His sense of humor,
Captain Holt is great.
that deadpanness. Oh my God, I love it. I crack up every time whenever he says something and he's like, "This was a joke," but he says it in that deadpan. I just die inside laughing. It's
Andre
so great.
Brower, who plays Captain Holt, like I don't think he's won an Emmy. He deserves all the awards. It is such a good performance. I think my favorite character in the show, I think Captain Holt is probably the single funniest character. My favorite character is definitely Terry. I think Terry is great. He's so great. Terry Crews is amazing, and just like what he brings to the character and like all the third person talking to himself stuff is just how much he loves yogurt. It's amazing. That show is great. I'm so happy for both of you.
Like I said, I couldn't be more excited. Techtic he started watching it without me, but he had to rewatch, I think, the first half of season 1. And now we're rolling in new territory that he hasn't seen yet. So I'm super pumped.
Yeah, by the way, my favorite character is Rosa. Just saying.
That's a great answer. There's no wrong answers in that show. I want updates from you both about where you are in the show, because there are certain moments that I can't spoil, but are just so funny. And I will say most of them involve Captain Holt, just because of how great a character he is. But
so good.
Yeah. Happy watching to the both of you.
Okay. So I have 2 major updates. I'm going to start with dusting off ye old Rocket League. So it has been many moons since Nerdbomber and I have played that game, and it was back when they had crates. So in a previous podcast, we had talked about how they're changing their currency and they're moving to something that's less gambly. Well, we've experienced this.
Yeah, blueprints.
It is now blueprints, and
you don't sound thrilled.
Well, what's interesting about it is if you had crates, you can turn them all into blueprints, which is basically it'll unveil each and every crate of what you would have won had you paid for the key to open it up. But now you have to pay for the exact value of whatever it is you open up after you open it. So
what's the point of opening it then?
To pay. It's basically now you can go to a store, more or less. You see what you want, and then if you really want it bad enough, you buy it.
Well, it's like a conversion factor. So the blueprints are now what they're giving out in place of crates. And so if you had crates in the past, now you're just getting these blueprints, which is what you would have gotten in the crate. But now you're basically getting the opportunity to buy something by chance.
And now you'll buy it only if you really want it. It won't be random. So you'll see something, you'll understand what the value is, and you go, "Yep, that's what I want. That's what I'm willing to pay." So before it was like $1 per key, and you can get something worth nothing or something worth a lot, but you're only paying $1 per crate that you're opening.
So in other words, it takes the gambling aspect out of it completely, which is probably what they were aiming to do.
Right. So now you can either pay $1 and get like a regular rare thing, or you can pay $20 and get a black market thing. And I was really excited.
Is it literally called black market?
Yes.
Like, did they call it that?
I was really excited when I did this crate conversion to blueprints, and I opened it and I got a black market thing, and I was like, sweet, what is it to pay? And then when I went into the shop and saw that it was $20, I was instantly discouraged and said to myself, I am never spending more than this game cost me, which was free. So So that very quickly ended there, and kind of left me with like a disappointment. I liked the gambling aspect, and it never really felt like I was, hitting my wallet hard, even though in reality I was taking a lot of $1 purchases, which basically summed up to $20. But it didn't feel bad, and now I feel bad about making these purchases, and it didn't really bring me enjoyment.
I will
You're just like describing why gambling works, by the way.
Yes.
That was basically what you just said. But anyways, Nerdbomber.
So I think I've waxed poetic about the Rocket League black market more times than I'd care to admit on the show. And I will say I'm kind of torn on this. So first of all, I do like that you see what you're getting and you don't waste money on things that are just crap. That said, $20 for a black market decal does hurt when you were only previously spending $1 for a chance at one. However, I did some research into what the actual value of these black market decals went for on the actual, like, quote unquote, black market. Because you can trade with people and buy things with real money on apps.
Right.
And so the one decal that Techtic got a chance to buy was the Fire God decal. And that thing could go for like $50. So if you spent $20 on it, it through their store, I mean, technically you're just giving the developers money instead of Joe Schmo, who spent like 200 hours farming for this decal. So
well, yeah, and it's all
more reasonable, but
and it's probably carefully calculated, right? Where they set the black market key value to be $20 because they know that if you were just doing the dollar way before and getting a chance at it, it would take you X amount of dollars probability wise to get something like this. So I'm sure they did the math on it, either in your favor or not.
The unfortunate part is that it does kind of gatekeep people from being able to get cool stuff, because you used to be able to have a chance at that $1 you could get a really nice thing, and now unless you're willing to pony up 20, there's no chance you're going to ever get that nice decal or that new car body that you really want.
That's a fair point. So now, to even larger an extent than before, those things are like legitimately status symbols on that game.
Mm-hmm.
Well, with that being said, I might reconsider. Who knows?
I mean, I agree. I generally agree that so the gambling thing is obviously bad and harmful for various reasons that have been documented over the past couple of years. But I almost think that creating status symbols like that is like in a way worse. But I don't know. I mean, I'm not familiar enough with the Rocket League economy to.
It used to be cool. Now it's not so cool anymore.
Summary.
Yeah, there you have it.
You guys know, it was an addiction at one point.
You were in deep. Yeah.
It wasn't so much me buying keys and playing with chance. Like, I was collecting crates and then selling crates so that I could buy the stuff that I really wanted, and I didn't sink any money into it. It was just a lot of like wheeling and dealing on the internet, which was crazy and took a lot of my time. Like, there were days when I would literally run in the house and I would tell Techtic, you need to get off the TV, I need to turn on the Xbox because I have a guy from England and he wants to trade me, but he has to go to sleep, so I have like 5 minutes to do this.
Good Lord.
And it was getting kind of crazy. So I don't know, it was a little bit more interesting then, but I guess in a way it puts more of the focus back on the game, and it was a little bit less stressful, I noticed. So when we used to play, we would play to try to get crates and stuff, and the more games that you win, the more chances you have to get a crate. And now without that, I felt like it was just more casual, and we did have a little bit more fun actually playing the game instead of trying to like get stuff. So that was cool, at least.
How many times, ballpark, do you think you've talked about Rocket League on this podcast? Because it's double digits at this point.
Oh, it's got to be easily.
It's a timeless game for sure.
If you go, it's almost embarrassing to see how many hours I've sunk into Rocket League. Like, it's bad.
Do you have a number that you're willing to share?
At the last count, which was about this time last year, I think I was at like 185 hours that I'd played.
Oh, I was expecting you to say like 1,000 hours. You're fine.
I mean, it's still a lot though.
It's. I mean, yeah. What's that, like a week worth of time?
Mm-hmm.
That's not bad.
So the other update that I have is Nerdbomber and I watched Bad Times at the El Royale.
Oh,
and
yes.
Rotten Tomatoes gave it a 75%, and I would have to say I recommend it, and I would bump it up to probably an 80 or an 85% because the whole movie was really engaging. There was a couple parts that made me feel uncomfortable, but it was intended to make you feel uncomfortable. Right. Specifically, Chris Hemsworth.
Hemsworth.
Hemsworth. His character was very Dahmer is the word I'm looking for.
Charles Manson.
Thank you, Charles Mansonworth. Yeah. And very culty and made you feel uncomfortable, and he nailed it, which made it good, but it also put a kind of an eerie twist on it, just because how much there are parallels there.
It's a really good movie.
It is.
The kind of like hodgepodge of characters that you get that are all, the idea being that they're all converging on this hotel at this given time where something's about to happen. Like it has a very nostalgic feel to it, and it's overall well executed and well acted. I watched it back when it originally came out. I was a big fan of it.
Yeah, I will say, based on the trailer, I guess I expected something a little bit different. And what I got in the actual movie itself, I was super happy with, because, I don't know, something about the trailer was just a little bit off-putting, which is, I guess, why we waited so long to watch it, because I was just like, I'm not really feeling this. But the movie itself, like, I think I wasn't on the edge of my seat, but I was totally engrossed the entire time.
There's
By
only
the way,
so much, yeah.
Bellboy, favorite character, just saying.
Well, and that's a perfect example of what I'm about to say, which is that there's only so much that the trailer for that movie can hint at what each character's backstory is. So like the driving force for this movie is that all these characters show up and they all have like some kind of dark secret, right? And you spend the movie finding out what those secrets are. And in the case of the bellboy, you don't really find out a whole lot about it until like the last 20 minutes. And it turns out to be this like, I know spoilers, but a very pivotal thing. So yeah, it's a great movie. Well written, really, really fun. It was, I think it came out in August originally of like last year, and by that I mean 2018. And it was a really fun summer movie. I remember that. A really good popcorn movie. So,
speaking of popcorn movies,
oh yes,
we should do an update on the Fantasy Movie League.
Congrats this week to our good friend Florida Hawk, who has been playing in the league for quite a while. Logged a first place this week with just around 68 million, barely edging out Techtic at number 2 with 66. Nerdbomber at number 3, also with just a little bit under 66. I managed number 4 this week because I actually set a lineup, and I wound up at 61. Mecha Yoda at 61 as well. Our good friend Ben at 60. Hipster Pop Geek at 50, Devin Reed at 31.5, Secret Asian Man at 31.5 as well, and then you start getting basically empty cineplexes. Looking at the overall for this season, which is now about to enter week 3, Techtic still at number 1 with 171 million on the season. Florida Hawk just behind with 166, Nerdbomber with 165, Mecha Yoda with 163, Hipster Pop Geek with 153, our good friend Ben at 133, Devin Reed at 126, Secret Asian Man at 115, and I am at 90 because I'm trying to make up lost ground from not submitting the first week. And Spitfire rounding out the top 10 at around 25 million. So if you want to get in on this action, pick some box offices, see how you stack up with the rest of them, you can head on over to fantasymovieleague.com and look up the League Online Warriors podcast. It's a locked league, but the password to get in is podcast, all lowercase. So, yeah, get in while you can. Beat me. It's not that hard. And, yeah, let's play a game. What do you say?
All right, so this week I have an interesting game for you guys. This quiz topic is based on soap. So I'm going to switch things up a little bit, and I'm going to do kind of like a traditional trivia style. And I'm going to give you guys multiple choice questions, and whoever answers correctly first is going to get a point.
Oh, wow.
So kind of like a buzz-in.
So kind of like a buzz-in.
Okay.
The caveat here is that if you answer incorrectly, you will lose a point.
Oh my goodness.
So you have to battle speed, but also be correct.
Classic risk-reward situation.
Yeah.
I'm into it.
Okay.
Also, this quiz has been brought to you by the National Soap Board.
Can we go
maybe
negative?
Not even a thing. Oh, yeah. Come on. Yes.
Yeah.
Otherwise, he's going to come hot out of the gate. I know
That's true.
strategy.
Yeah, you can go negative. That's a good idea. Okay. So.
Nice try, Techtic.
What are one of the 2 main ingredients needed to make soap?
Lie.
I didn't even give you a multiple choice, but you did get that right. So
that counts. I was waiting for the choices. All right, I accept the outcome.
Okay, maybe we'll add a new point rule here.
So if you get it, if you just shout it out before the multiple choice, you get it right. I mean, that's a fine rule.
Hey, that's a risk versus reward, right? I don't even know what the answers are.
I have to give you credit. You took a risk and it paid off. So give that man his point.
Okay, we'll do that. Okay, so the next question here is, what is the process of soap making called? And the 4 options that I have for you are soapification, saponification, sterilization, or salification.
Saponification.
It is saponification. So now the game is all tied up. You each have a point.
This is intense. How
and
many questions are there?
I have 10 questions overall. I figured I would ask 7 and leave the last 3 in case we get into a tiebreaker situation. And I do have to give props to Pro Prof's quizzes because that is where I'm getting this quiz from because I ran out of time. So fully admitting that. Sorry. Which company became the first major soap company in America?
Dial.
You are incorrect.
So now I can listen to all the responses and he can't answer, right?
Exactly.
Oh, heck yes. Okay, bring him on.
So we have Colgate, Procter & Gamble, The Body Shop, or the American Soap Company. And also, Techtic lost a point for answering incorrectly.
Oh boy. So if I answer incorrectly, I also lose a point, right?
This is true. You can also choose to pass, I suppose.
That's BS.
You know what? I don't pass. Illegal doesn't pass. I'm going to say Procter & Gamble.
Okay, so you're actually incorrect. It is Colgate and Company. So we're back to a tie game. You each have no points. This is like a fresh slate here.
They switched to toothpaste after making soap. Unbelievable.
Okay.
All right, this game's hard, but let's continue.
So this one has 2 processes in the name. What are the 2 main processes that soap can be made? Option 1, hot and warm process. Option 2, stirred and shaken process. Option 3, boiled and freeze process. Or option 4, hot and cold process.
I'm going to say hot and warm.
That is incorrect. So now you have a negative point. Techtic, do you have an answer for us?
Can you repeat the answers?
Okay, so the remaining ones are stirred and shaken, boiled and freeze, or hot and cold.
Hot and cold.
That is correct. So now we have a big differential here where Techtic has 1 and Illeagle has -1.
It just means the comeback's going to be amazing.
Okay, so the next question is, which form of soap is more environmentally friendly? I have 3 options for you guys. First one is bar soap. The second is liquid soap. And the third is both.
Liquid.
Techtic, do you have an answer? Because that was incorrect again. So Illeagle is down to -2.
Bar?
I hate this game.
You are correct. Because, they can't both. Yeah, I guess
can't both be. Dang it.
By default, you get that. So now it is 2 to -2.
It's a million to 0.
You have to think about the container.
Okay.
I was thinking because sometimes bar soap has those microbeads in it. I know that's really bad for the environment.
Well, you haven't seen those ads for environmentally friendly soap where the dispensers shave it off instead of pumping?
I have not.
I have not. Let's
if you like the hand pump, folks, there are bar soap that they shave it off so that you can be environmentally friendly and be clean.
I have seen like ASMR videos where like people are cutting soap.
No.
So at this point, I basically have to start firing from the hip, as if I wasn't doing that before. But I'm going to be really, really swinging here. So let's just continue.
Okay. Washing with soap reduces the incidence of diarrhea risk by 47. I don't know what this question means. I'm sorry.
Well, I want to hear the rest of it. So it reduces the diarrhea risk by a certain percentage, it sounds like. Let's hear the options.
47%, 24%, 42%, or 25%.
It's 42 for sure.
Okay, that is incorrect.
Can you let me answer first? I can at least remove an option for you.
You're down to -3. So.
I don't go last. I always go first.
Can you repeat the answers?
47, 24, or 25%.
It's obvi 24.
Okay, that is incorrect too. So the answer is 47.
Dang.
I'm not sure. I really have no idea what this even means, but apparently it reduces the incidence of diarrhea risk.
It probably kills E. coli bacteria.
The incidence of diarrhea risk. That's interesting. Interesting phrasing to that question. We learned something today.
So what's the score? -4 too?
Yes, I believe so.
All right. It's fine.
Okay, so the final question. We won't have to get into the tiebreakers because there's no possible way Illeagle can win this, but we're going to finish out.
Techtic, I'll let you guess first. How about that?
So the world produces this amount of soap in pounds every year. 1 billion, 1 trillion, 100 trillion.
100 trillion pounds.
Oh, I'm sorry. I left out one. Sorry. Oh, I messed this one up. Oh, well.
That was the answer. It was a sabotage.
Was the answer the one that you left out?
It was.
Okay, so let's do another question because we can't end it like that.
Okay.
Have you ever hosted a quiz before?
I have. I messed up, man.
Hey guys, what's a quiz?
She was really thrown by that diarrhea question.
I really was. Okay. Can liquid soap dispensers contain harmful bacteria? Yes, no, or maybe?
Yes.
Okay, Techtic is correct. The answer is yes.
I was going to say no, obviously. All right. Well, I accept the loss. That was one of the more resounding losses in Online Warriors quiz history.
Fun fact about Techtic: he grew up on the bar soap. We didn't have no hand pumps in my day.
Techtic lives for soap. And Nerdbomber lives for toilet humor. We love toilet humor here at Online Warriors.
I almost couldn't finish the question. I was like cracking up over here. Sorry, guys.
So Techtic will host next week's quiz because I clearly did not even come close to measuring up to his soap knowledge.
Let me know.
I've actually made my own soap before.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting. As the listeners, just let me know if you like this new format. I think we're going to try to mix things up a little bit as the topics come. I feel like the lie detector is a lot of fun, but when you get into some of the topics, it becomes very difficult to do, and then it limits what kind of topics we can cover on our quiz.
Well, so lie detector, though, would have been a great, because it's a pun, right? Because soap, because of the lie.
Oh, that's a good one.
A missed opportunity. Yeah, so also let us know in the comments. Wait, we don't have comments. Let us know on Twitter or wherever you can get a hold of us.
The social meds.
The social meds. If you're a bar soap person or a liquid soap person, and our Twitter handles are at @OWIllegal86, at @OWNerdbomber, and at @OWTechtic. And there's also the at Online Warriors 1 main account for the show. We'd love to hear from you. We would also love to hear from you over on Apple Podcasts. Go over there, leave us a review. Tell us, talk to us about soap or about Morbius or just about the show. Who really cares? We'd just love to hear from you. And we appreciate you all so much, and we thank you again for listening. I'm hoping to do better in the quiz next week, but for now I'm just going to go sulk. So have a great week.
Goodbye.
Bye.